Alright, damn, inna alhamdulillah wa kafah, wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulih al-Mustafa, wa ala ibadi alladhina irtada, wa man bihudahum ihtada, wa bi athari ahli al-Madinah iqtafa, wa ba'ad, fassalamu Allahi ala al-qawm, ahlan wa sahlan bikum, wa marhaban, wa Juan Ying Layth, bienvenidos a todos, bakhair ragale, khush amadid people, and Swagatam, Swagatam. Alright, what's going on? Yes, salam. Yes, salam. Right, people. Oh, look at this. I've been still a bit jet lagged. So tonight's session might be slightly shorter than usual. As you can see, yaar, koi shave hi nahi kiye hain. Yaar, I haven't even shaved. Yeah. That's such chaos has struck my life. Not. Mufti texting his kya astaghfirullah, toba, texting my gal. Did you use that in the singular? Assuming just toba. Such low expectations, huh? Wa alaikum assalam, people. Alright, Asif, Elizabeth, Fahim, ahlan wa sahlan, Riz. Right, that's what we're talking about, people. That's what we're talking about. What's going on? What is going on? Right, so gotta zoom in to get some of these questions. Let me put this on silent. Silencio, people. So, what else is nutty? So, dear Mufti Abu Layth, after watching you, I went and checked those references. Ya salam. This is like a letter. This is Ahmadiyya Islam. Oh, damn. Yeah. I should read who the message is from first. And not, dear Mufti Abu Layth, after watching your video on false messiahs, I went and checked those references and not one turned out to be true. Obviously, yaar, not one. All of them turned out to be true, not one. But do you see the irony in that? If they didn't turn out to be true, neither did your Messiah. This is called teaching through irony. Wow. Right, so what's going on? May Allah bless you, help my friends, and I convert. God bless. Whoa, all right, I help your friend convert. Ya salam. May God bless your friend and you. And all right, what's going on? Khadija, Sheikh, how was your trip? Trip was awesome. All turned out false law. Okay, first of all, I'll just answer the false Messiah question. Right, the refutation of the false messiahs was actually correct. It's not that it wasn't. I was sent some link by some Qadianis saying, look, you got this wrong. And what they meant by wrong was things like, oh, you know, he's saying this, but this is still kind of right. And it's just basically interpretations. And I think they said something about, you know, you quoted, you said one of these books, and the book you mentioned, in his biography, and the book isn't a biography, it's a compilation work or something, and that's one mistake. And, you know, like this is what they meant by you're getting these things wrong. What part of do I look like I'm bothered? Do you not get? Abey yaar. You know, nobody's interested in Qadiani Islam. I mean, I just simply don't care. Did you really think I was going to dedicate a lifetime to studying Mirza Ghulam Qadiani? You gotta be joking. There are way too many TV series to be watching rather than researching Qadiani Islam. Yes, I went through some basic things and I highlighted them. I'm not saying that the Qadianis are going to accept that interpretation. That's obvious, they're not going to. But these things were from official, there's so many websites. And the research I took was from a certain Darul Uloom. I think at the time I quoted it. And the Darul Uloom had already done all their research. So if you've got an issue with it, take it up with them. Yahan pe ye dal nahi galne wali. You know, this false messiah thing just not going to work. You know, this is not working, you know. And as far as, you know, things like they said, oh, he never died with cholera. But he did. I mean, that's what the reports say. I mean, to be honest with you, I can't really care less about Ghulam Mirza Ahmad, serial kisser Hari Ram, serial kisser Qadiani Sahib. In my refutation, I couldn't really care less what he did or didn't do. He really doesn't occupy my mind. You know, you're giving me too much. You give me too much credit here. I really couldn't care less about it, honestly. He's, you know, like my radar of my conscientious thoughts. From the most bizarre things that are there, it doesn't even strike. It's not even near them. It's not even a blip on that radar. I honestly don't care. Like, it's... yes, you guys shouldn't have picked on me, you know, you shouldn't have tried to bully me, you know, this one not work, you know, not nice, you know, this one. Because you people, that doesn't make any sense. You see, I did not really bother with the Qadiani people. I just left them, and I was actually very kind of compassionate towards people treating how they should treat the Qadianis and stuff. And I suppose I still advocate that we shouldn't be, you know, there shouldn't be any kind of persecution and things like that. But I was actually, when I used to be asked questions, I never used to really go into it much, and I never used to that much diss or be, but they came attacking me. I don't know what, they woke up drunk or something and thought, I know, from all the people, let's pick on Mufti Abu Layth. Have they never watched any of my Monday Nights with Mufti, for God's sake? Ab jao, raw, you know, go. I warned you. I said, look, listen, I left them a nice message on Instagram saying, leave me alone, otherwise I'm gonna troll the hell out of you. Like, you've picked on the wrong guy. This is like, and did they leave me alone? No. I said to them, sudhar jao, that, you know, become straight, sort yourselves out. But they said, जो और बिगड़ने में मजा है वो सुधरने में कहाँ. That there's too much fun in this, you know. So then, you know, they get the taste of the medicine, you know. This one, well, there you go. Ab jao. You can now, all 10 of them, or however, whatever number of them. And then now they're trying to educate me about, you got this wrong, we don't believe like this. Sorry, dude. I am totally not interested. Totally not interested. Right, so... Right, let's move on to something more interesting. To be honest with you, this is, before I move on, I'll give a little message to any of my Qadiani friends out there. Friends. Listen, people, on a serious note now, serious, you know, I be serious now, okay, so I understand that, look, everybody, most people are just born into something, so I understand you're just born into the faith in the same manner. I don't hold that against you, but what I would say, on a serious note, is that really, you know, when you're on your own, as the Quran says, that إِنَّمَا أَعِذُكُمْ بِوَاحِدَ, I only tell you one piece of advice, that when you're on your own, just think about this. Just think about, is this really that God's great plan of divine intervention for humanity was to speak to this guy in Punjab during the colonial periods and have a chat with him in Punjabi and then tell him I love you in English and you know, and give him these kind of messages and nothing comes off it. You know, that's just like such a failure. That's I'm sorry to say, but that really is like he's miserably failed. I mean, if if Qadiani is humanity's solution, then that's an abysmal failure. Like I would rather, you know, like I would be looking to like, how do I euthanize myself? Can I just like, can I kind of, can I smother myself to death? It's like, I would be so embarrassed, honestly. If I was so I'm not saying this to disrespect you, but I know it sounds disrespectful. I'm not trying to be a hypocrite. Yeah, you know, I try to be serious, but then I just... Anyway, so being serious, look, just think about it. Think about it. Islam has stood the test of time. It has truly shown and altered the path and trajectory of human civilization. It definitely has played a huge contributory role to where humanity is today. One may argue, is it still as playing that same role today? I mean, probably not, because Muslims have decided to become a bit the way they have today. But that said, it has played for centuries. I mean, and nobody can deny that. It is actually, like I mentioned, the only religion, objectively speaking, that sealed the deal when it came to global faiths. There was never a faith after Islam that would ever take such a global resting place. Now you can think, look, does Qadianism really compare to... And if it does, fine. If you feel that it does, it, you know, it floats your boat. Theek hai, maze karo yaar. Chill out, man. Don't worry about it. But if you really, you know, on your own, just have a think about it. Just think, bloody hell, you know, and for God's sake, what have I been believing all this time? But cool, but that's some serious advice. Okay, this is what we call heart to heart. I have a heart to heart with you now, you know, heart to heart. Ke dil mera dak dak dole. So this is a personal, right? So think about it, people. Think about it. Now let's move on to some. Oh, right, somebody had asked me about my trip. Yeah, good trips. Always great to just chill out, take a little break, especially as it gets a bit icy in the UK. I went out some book shopping. This, people, has come into print recently. This is called a Taj wal Iqlil. This is a commentary on a major Maliki fiqh text known as the Mukhtasar of Khalil. It's a brief text of Khalil, which holds a high position in Maliki fiqh. Now, this commentary is really by Abu Abdullah al-Mawwaq, who's famous as, they call him al-Mawwaq, or sometimes they call him Ibn al-Mawwaq as well. Now, he passed away 897 Hijri. So we're looking really almost, you know, we're looking over 500 years ago at least. But the interesting thing about this scholar, I bought this is in about, I believe it's 6 volumes. It's recently come out. There was a small commentary of his. This is the larger, he's had 2 commentaries, a small and a more in-depth commentary, and this is the more in-depth one that has now recently been released. I thought that because I am due to start teaching fiqh soon, once I run a dummy class on one of those websites. I was looking at a website called Twitch, by the way. If somebody has some better suggestions, do reach out to me. In the past, I used to teach on something called Wizik. But that was many years ago. I'm sure they've kind of upped the game by now. So I've been referred to a few, and so I'm thinking of going with this Twitch, but do give me your feedback on that. So I was looking that when I do start teaching, of maybe teaching Khalil, Mukhtasar Khalil, and so this is an awesome commentary. Why? I actually like Mawwaq. Mawaq people, let me tell you a bit about him, just very briefly. He was the last remaining heavyweight don of Muslim Spain. Okay. He in fact lived into the final collapse, the absolute collapse of Muslim Spain. And at that time he was a very old man. He's like from the students of he like comes a generation or two after people like Imam Shatibi and Ibn Asim and all those kind of great scholars of Granada. And he lived in Granada. And when Granada fell, Gharnata they call it in Arabic, when it fell, and Ferdinand and Isabella, they've kind of come in on the horses. And it's a very tragic story where Abu Abdullah, who they call Bo Abdil in English, he kind of signed over Granada. Because Granada is a very difficult, due to its landscape, it's virtually impossible to forcibly conquer. Like as in, because it's surrounded by mountains, and then it has a kind of like an entrance point where you can come in. But because that's where the fortresses are, and it's high up, so it's not easy to kind of, like, you can't surround the whole city, and you know, you can't just sneak into the city, for example. The people have to open the gates to you. So it's a very, those of you that haven't visited Muslim Spain, you should do so. And I have a course on Muslim Spain as well, in a history course on YouTube called Al-Andalus From Rise to Fall. And so when Muslim Spain fell in the year 1492, Abu Abdullah, who was the last remaining, he was called Abu Abdullah Saghir, he was the last remaining king of Granada. He signed over a treaty and he opened the doors, and part of the treaty he signed over, I think it was, in the course I go through it in detail, I think it was 67 conditions that he had the Pope sign to countersign. And really, Muslims told him at the time that this is stupid because these conditions mean nothing to these people. They had laid siege to Granada for almost, I mean, they had made many attempts. They were trying to kind of conquer it with actual attempts for almost 2 years. And I think that last siege was for almost 9 months. And during that time, Isabella had sworn never to take a bath. So Isabella thought, I know, I'll just, you know, with my stench, I'll force them to vacate the fortress by just oozing off this odor. So Isabella, for God's sake, didn't take a bath for, I think, those 9 months. I mean, what the hell would have that been like? So the thing was that, so anyway, and so, and the history, I go through a lot of the details in my course about where they used to set up Camp Santa Fe, which is now a town and stuff like this. But nevertheless, eventually Abu Abdullah agrees to letting them in with all these conditions, and they pay him all this money, and then he leaves Spain and heads to modern day Morocco, to northwest Africa, Al-Maghrib at the time. And people did tell him, but part of the condition was he had to bring in Isabella and Ferdinand. They were on horseback, and he had to kind of hold the reins of the horse and lead them into Granada through the doors of Granada. And they did, and when they came in, one of the first things they did was in the palace, Al-Hamra Palace, they put up the crucifix on the roof, and then they obviously started to put things into order. And one of the things that they had was like a large gathering, a convention. They called the people of the town, they get together, and then they said, who is the oldest, most senior authority scholar that is present amongst them? So it was no other than our legend Al-Mawaq. He was a very old man in his, I believe, 90s at that time, or late 80s, and he was the most senior authority, Islamic authority in Granada. And Granada was the last bastion of Muslim Spain. So they called him, and they said that he had to concede to them. He had to accept in front of, because if he did, then that would reduce the chances of an uprising. And I mean, it was too late for an uprising now anyway. Once they were inside, it was over. And so he does, and Abu Abdullah goes and he has to then kiss the hand of Ferdinand and Isabella. I mean, poor Mawak, I mean, I hope she'd washed her hands at least by that time. Because for God's sake, if she hadn't been bathing for 9 months, at least, let's hope she had been at least washing her hands for 9 months. But nevertheless, so he does in public. So Abu Abdullah al-Mawaq kind of kisses their hand and that's it, and then retreats. But he's an amazing scholar, and his insights are sometimes very conducive for our day and age. And maybe that's because of the day and age he lived in, when Muslims were under threat, when an Islamic identity was under threat, so he's somebody I've always kind of been a fan of. And so I brought his commentary. It's in 5 to 6 volumes. I picked up this book, Al-Itqan. I think I made a quick Snapchat of it as well. And it's just it's a classic. It's just about virtue. It's about issues to do with the Quran, miscellaneous matters, and it deals with things like surahs, how they were revealed, the virtues, the rulings. But what I actually brought it for is a topic I'm currently researching, which is to do with i'jaz of the Quran. What is the miraculous nature of the Quran, and what is the landscape, the broad discourse that scholars have presented. So I thought that's something interesting. That's one book amongst a few I'm going through on that matter. There's a few other books I'm going through dealing with i'jaz in the Quran. Right, this was an interesting text, people. This was to do with popular hadith that are deemed sahih, but they've got a weak thing added to them. So they have a weak part. And so for example, like let's say, here's a popular hadith. Al-wudu shatr al-iman. That wudu is a portion of iman, of faith. Was-siwak shatr al-wudu. And miswak, using the siwak, is a portion of wudu. But that part in red, was-siwak shatr al-wudu, is actually weak. It's not a... So like this, this hadith has done is brought famous hadith that have a sahih part to it, but a certain portion of that hadith is actually weak. I thought that's interesting. Let's take a look at this. So for example, there's a hadith to do with Hajj. Man adraka jam'an ma'al imam wan nas hatta yafidu faqad adraka al-hajj. Whosoever reaches the standing at Mina and with the imam and people until they go, then he has reached Hajj. And then there's a part in red that says, وَمَنْ لَمْ يُدْرِكْ جَمْعًا فَلَا حَجَّ لَهُ. And whosoever does not reach it has no Hajj. Now that part is not authentic. So it's interesting. I mean, I thought, well, why not? I'll show you some of these just briefly. This is a book I've got before. I just picked up a different print. It's the famous Sheikh Ahmad Shakir's commentary on Ibn Kathir on Usul Hadith, on the study of Hadith and how Hadith are categorized and all the debates around that. I mean, it's nothing new. I've got it before. I just thought, oh, that's a nice print. It's an interesting text. It's by a contemporary called Al-Ajuz, which means the old woman, but that's not why he's named it that. And it's to do with words that have peculiar kind of meanings and opposite meanings. So that's something linguistic. I saw it and I thought, well, So, for example, the term khal, look, here's the word, al-khal. So, he's got it, the whole thing versified. So, he says, وَالْخَالُ كِبْرٌ غَيْمٌ وَفِي الْجِبَالِ الضَّخْمُ. And then he says, وَمِن تَوَاخِ الْأُمْ وَشَامَةٌ فِي الْبَشَرِ. So, the point is that this is like, he's made it as a poem, but that khal in Arabic, those of you that are studying Arabic, khal can mean like, you get like kind of, like what they call like beauty spots or these kind of things. They call that a khal. It's also called a shama in Arabic, right? So that's called a khal, but the uncle is called a khal. Arrogance, clouds, a great mountain. All of these things are called khal in Arabic. But then he also says, وَالْخَالُ أَيْضًا اللِّوَى وَالْبَرْقُ وَالظَّنُّ سَوَى وَمَنْ فُؤَادُهُ هَوَى مِنْ حُبِّ ذَاتِ الْحَوَرِ. So he says al-khal is also somebody, it's a flag that is made for a kind of, for an army or something like this, and lightning, and suspicion or thought, and a person who is madly in love, person who is madly in love with a woman whose eyes, look at the detail that they're going into, that her eyes, that they are like, the actual is either so dark black with such a bright white kind, so the disparity, the contrast of her eyes, the brightness of the white and the darkness of the black, like these things are so outstanding. And that's, by the way, where they get the term hur in paradise. The hur. It's to do with the eyes, you see, being so, the darkness being so dark and the whiteness being so white. So that's an example anyway, not to kind of let you guys get distracted. But yeah, so some of these things, I thought I'll just show you some. This is a musnad of the Muwatta of Imam Malik, done by contemporary scholars, including Sheikh Abdul Qadir al-Arnaout, for example, amongst them. Now what that means is they've organized the Muwatta of Imam Malik according to the Sahaba, the companions of the Prophet, and how many hadith they transmit. So anyway, that's some, and there's some of the little books I kind of picked up whilst I was there. But yeah, people, I thought I'd share some of that with you. هل قرأت متن الأجرمية في النحو? Hell yeah. I think I must have read that so many years ago when I was still a teenager. But some people say hur is neither male nor female. Oh, gender fluid. Yeah. Who asked that? Imran Khan. You nutty. You gender fluid hur. The hur in paradise. You turn up to Jannah. So let's say we turn up to Jannah and we have gender fluid, and we say, sorry, I thought I was expecting the, are you the hur? And the hur is like, did you assume my gender? I thought you, and you say something like, you say, oh no, it's just that I thought she would be, and the hur says, excuse me, she? Excuse me? It's gender fluid here. So we're like, alright. Hey. Well, that will be one hell of an interesting... We'll be like, cha, these games and in Jannah. If only I knew that these were the games we were meant to be preparing for. So, right. Well, hur. Huh? Well, it does sound sometimes a bit close to another word in English, which is not a nice word. So you have to be careful on the pronunciation, people. Okay, be careful. Right, so let's take some questions. Right, so I believe they are female-like. In Surah Rahman, Hurun maqsuratun fil khiyam. Okay, we've got Imran Khan is still contemplating the nature of the hur. You gotta say though, some of the, the stories you'd hear as a kid and growing up about hurs, I totally couldn't understand what the hell. I remember somebody telling me in the local masjid, they go, there's going to be such a hur in paradise that, so, okay, some stories you could get that you think, oh, like, they'll say, like, she's so, I don't know, if she was to, I don't know, like, spit in the sea, the whole sea would become so sweet, and, okay, those kind of things you can get. I mean, you can fathom. But I remember being told a story, like they said, oh, you know, when you get to paradise and the Hour, they said that, so there's this particular Hour and her bones are transparent or something. So when you look at her, you can see her bone. I just totally couldn't get what the... I was like, huh? I was like, kuch zyada phenk diye. You know, this one blagging too much. You know, you need to calm down. You know, this doesn't make any sense. What you're actually, what do you mean? Like you're looking, you can see through the bones. Like, how is that meant to be in any way alluring? That's like, she's got see-through bones or what? This sick. What kind of game is this? You're like, Ya Allah, this ain't the reward I was asking for. Anyway, let's take a look at some other interesting questions, people. Can we put... we've got Wasif Beg asking, can we put money in the saving account that pays interest? Well, people, can we... can somebody put the account details on here for him to put the money into the saving into the saving accounts? So, oh people, that reminds me, we'll be talking in a while about the Mufti Masala. There's some interesting news going on with Sheikh Asrar Sahab, but I'll get to that later on. So yes, before I digress, yes, look, interest, I've got a detailed video on mortgages, loans, what they mean, why interest doesn't mean why the interest of the Quran doesn't generally apply to these things, these institutions today. No matter how bad these institutions are, the riba of the Quran doesn't apply to it. They are not riba al-jahiliyyah in that sense. Ontologically, rather, in terms of their essence. Okay, I'm not saying they're good, but they're not the same thing. So I have explained the closest you could get to riba al-jahiliyyah is like a loan shark, kind of dangerous loan shark, which would then apply. So that would be haram, and that would be what the Quran was condemning. It doesn't, the institutions don't work in the same way. And I've got a detailed video anyway, so you can watch that. It's on YouTube. Why go over the same thing, huh? So it's okay. How is Islam religion relevant today? Oof. Yaar. How is Islam relevant today? That's a good question. You see, somebody asked a question. They said to me, and that ties in here as well. So somebody messaged me, said, look, I've left Islam. And they said, well, I've left it a few years ago, the person said. And he said, well, look, you know, it doesn't make any sense and blah, blah, blah. And he said, look, I wish I'd come across your videos before. Maybe things would have been different. I mean, khair, chalo. No big deal. Depends which videos of mine, right? So the person says, well, look, you know, all these things, and does it really add up? And, you know, and I think he shared a video of some ex-Muslim. I think it was a video from Hassan Radwan about why Islam doesn't make sense or something like this. So anyway, I watched a bit of the clip and I did kind of respond. I said, look, you see, to me, because the person was asking me, I said, look, to me, you have to go back to the beginning. Okay, religion isn't, you see what people think, okay, this is what some people feel, that religion ought to be like an absolute answer, like faith is an absolute answer of certainty in the now and forever. You see, to me, it's not like that. To me, faith is like a journey. And it's a lifelong journey. It's not something which is it's not something, you know, absolute and certain, and a kind of certitude that is always, oh, I've got the answers to everything right now, and now I'm always going to have the answers to everything. To me, it doesn't. To some people, they might pretend that is what religion means for them. I think that's, I don't know. I think that doesn't make sense to me anyway. To me, it's a journey. Okay, so I said you've got to go back to the beginning. So I wrote that in my response to this person. I said, look, to me, the world, creation, consciousness, just being conscious, the cosmos, all of these things are too grand to be meaningless. To me. That's to me. I mean, you can disagree with me. But to me, for them to mean nothing, like consciousness in and of itself, to mean nothing, it just doesn't settle with me. I don't buy that it means nothing. To me, it must mean something. To some people, fine. I mean, they might think, you know, to me this means nothing. The fact that I can make meaning of things, the fact that I can appreciate things, the fact that I can understand, that this is nothing. But to me, that doesn't add up. That shows that there is something greater than us. That something greater, I mean, whatever, you know, I mean, it doesn't matter in what language you're going to call him, God or Allah or Khuda or whatever you're going to call him. That's the beginning point. And then from there, you work forward. Okay, so that's how we, because if this being exists, then we move forward from that point. And it is a journey. So like I said, from all the world faiths, the only one that really stands any test of reason and critical thought to me is Islam. Now, not to mention, that, I mean, notwithstanding the fact that there is a lot of baggage, I accept that, but cultural baggage and people, you know, institutionalization along the way and the clergy and all this stuff, I accept all of that. But in essence, Islam is the only one that can stand, it can stand the rigorous test of reason according to me. So, and you move forward with that, but it is a journey. It's not a set of absolute answers as in, oh, I've got the answer to everything now, aha, I'm done. It's not like that for me anyway. I feel it's going to be a journey throughout life. Faith does give people not only meaning, it gives them strength, it gives them solace, it gives them, like you will see, for example, throughout the world, how people cope with even hardships. You will see that people who have religion, they cope much better than people who don't have religion, generally speaking. You see, it's interesting because if you were just objectively viewing religion from a study of religion definitely, there's some things in religion that are very negative, unquestionably. Like things like, this is religion with a capital R. That's things like superstition. Superstition blocks people, it inhibits growth. It controls people. Religions have this. They have a lot of controlling power. They control, it's for the power of the elite. They kind of usually extortion, they extort the masses. And this happens in all religions. It happens in Islam too. So people, the mullahs are kind of like trying to extort the masses all the time. And this it happens in Christianity with the priests, it happens in Hinduism with the pundits, it happens everywhere. So, and superstition, like all this magic and all this nonsense and evil eye and all this kind of stuff, it's all nonsense, but it inhibits human growth. So these are the bad things associated with religion. But you see, according to my understanding, all these things are false, and Islam actually came to remove them. But it's a different matter that today many people might believe in them, but that's more a result of politics, human power, and institutionalization. It's not because of the religion itself. But when you look at the plus side, the positives, like things like providing meaning to life, providing a will to live, providing the kind of the coping mechanisms, that religion always outweighs the absence of religion. And so I think to say religion is meaningless is not true. Religion provides people with a story, it provides them with strength to go on in this world. And Islam specifically, what does it have to offer mankind today? I think that is a very good question, because, and it can from one perspective be a tough question because of how Muslims are behaving generally. So Muslims are behaving in a way that we don't have much to offer anymore. So because of that, it becomes a tough question. That what do Muslims have to offer? We don't have much to offer from one perspective. From the other perspective, we still have the concept of humanity, but divinely inspired. Now you could say, well, today in the West, we have civil rights, which we do, and we have human rights, which we do, and much greater than in the Muslim world, and unquestionably that is true. But still, there isn't a kind of, Muhammad al-Ghazali, the Sheikh Muhammad al-Ghazali, I don't mean Imam Ghazali of the past, but Sheikh Muhammad al-Ghazali, who is a student of people like Rashid Rida and these folks who passed away from Egypt recently, an amazing legend of a scholar, very open-minded, a kind of breath of fresh air and a beacon of reason in his time. Now, he was dealing with this question of what does Islam have to offer today? And he said that, and something amazing he said, well, how about this? He began by saying, how about that none of you have faith if you sleep with a full stomach whilst your neighbor remains hungry? Now, you might think, well, what's so special about that hadith? But in that hadith, this simple example, it encapsulates the essence of religion, which was humanity. That, look, you see, today human rights don't really push a sense of a kind of kin-like, a family-like essence to humanity. They don't push that at all. In these societies, we have human rights, but we don't have, like, people are polite, but they're not really friendly. They're not really caring like that. I mean, they do care about certain things. I'm not saying they're cold-hearted people at all. I'm not saying that. But they're not so bothered about somebody could be starving down the road. That's his problem. That's her problem. See, people have become very self-centered, and although they do care about every human being having human rights, but it's not their responsibility, it's the system's responsibility to cater for that individual. Islam has this to offer. It has this to offer, this kind of that you are actually in essence one kind of, you are one people from one source, that you are all related, that you have a responsibility to provide that kind of, that warmth of comfort, not just like, oh, the system needs to do this. And I think that in itself, as even a beginning point, has so much to say. It speaks volumes. So we need to, you see, sometimes we're looking for so many things that as an answer. Oh, Islam will answer, it will give this, it will give this, it will give. But really, it's the basics, the grassroots things that matter. And that's what I would begin with. I would say it has these things too. But we need to stop this Islam has a political solution to offer. Islam has this to offer. No, start with Islam came for humanity. That's what it has to offer. Humanity. So that's what I would say. Now, you could argue that, true, you can arrive at humanity without Islam. I would say that's true, you can. But having a kind of a divine guidance to it, a divine texture to this, just gives it a whole new level of importance. You see, because it's not that people in these societies are stupid. It's not that they don't feel empathy. They do. They know that somebody is hungry. It's not that they can't reason that we ought to help. But it's easy to just displace it by saying, well, the system should just take care of them. But it's different when there's a kind of divine guidance to that. So I would say that it does have a lot to offer, but maybe not what people are thinking, because some Muslims have this whole, it has to offer, it's a caliphate, it has to offer. You think, oh, for God's sake, that's the last thing we need, this kind of just political control by control freaks. These are not the things, it's not here to kind of like rule people and kill people and rob people's wealth and all these kind of nonsensical things. Question, Salam brother, I keep asking that Al Imran verse stating that you will talk in the cradle and in maturity, how is it a miracle to speak as an adult? Jazakallah. AK Allah. Alright. What a name. Right, so this is a question, people, that I believe I've answered before, but I'll take a little stab at it again. So look, people say, did Jesus speak in the cradle? Alayhi salam. Jesus Christ, right? Actually, on a side note, just to say, it is amazing how Isa alayhi salam, Jesus, is one of the most amazing people in what he has inspired after him. It is amazing in that sense that the whole world today, or not the whole world, but a substantial part of the world, how it's all being influenced to some extent by Christianity, as so by Islam as well, but by Christianity as well, the Roman Empire, things like this, and how that has then, obviously even though one could say whether it was St. Paul or other people that had a greater influence, but the point is, it still traces its roots to Jesus Christ, alayhi salam. Now, right, so the question is, did Jesus speak as a baby? People feel that the Quran teaches us that Jesus spoke as a baby or as a child or something. Now, I have mentioned that the Quran doesn't actually say that. Okay. Now, there's two things. There's different verses that can be used to allude to that. Okay. So there's one verse. So the story that people have taken. Okay, so this is the common story that a lot of Muslims have. Muslims believe that Mary went off, came back with a baby, and the Jews were up in arms, and they said, stone her, adultery. And she said, and Jesus spoke to them as a little, let's say as a 2-3 month old baby, and he started to speak, and he started to say, hey, this. And they said, oh, wow. And then they said, okay, we won't stone you. This is what a lot of Muslims do believe this. Unfortunately, it's not actually true in my understanding at all. But a lot of Muslims believe this. And as a story, it sounds nice. So I get that. The reading of the Quran can bend that way. I accept that. It can bend. It doesn't actually explicitly say any of these things, but it can bend that way to carry this story that I've just explained. The truth is, the nature of the Quran, whenever speaking about Jesus, is often vague and ambiguous. It's never quite clear, and I think that's fascinating. And one of the reasons it may have adopted that nature was so maybe Muslims could bridge a gap between them and Christians. But whenever the Quran speaks about Jesus, like I said, it will mention a lot of things which are we don't fully understand what they mean. Like, what does that even mean? And what is this? Like, why is Jesus referred to as the Word of God, Logos, which is from the Bible? And what does that even mean, that Jesus is the Word of God? And Jesus has the Holy Spirit with him. No other prophet is really mentioned in the Quran with the Holy Spirit. No other prophet is mentioned as the Word of God. These kind of things are really vague. Like, we don't fully understand what is going on here. Why are biblical, almost Christian concepts, which no Muslims actually believe. No Muslims believe that. They don't believe in Jesus to be the Word of God. But yet the Quran does say that Jesus is the Word of God. So what was this saying here? That it's quite vague in its essence. And like I said, it was using terms to build bridges between Christians and Muslims. Now, which it did to a great extent. So the story, coming back to this point, and the reason why that is important is you've got to understand, once you understand that, okay, there were vague terms used to build bridges, it then helps you understand this. There's 2 points where this is mentioned. One is this story of Mary and Jesus pointing to Jesus. Most likely this event is nothing to do with Jesus being a baby. Okay, the reason being, in all honesty, if Mary came back with a baby and the Jews at the time felt she had committed adultery, let's run with this hypothesis, there is no question that they would have killed her. There is no question about that. Mary was nowhere near a force to stop the Jews, okay, from killing her. They would have stoned her to death. There is no two ways about that. Saying that, oh, they saw the miracle of Jesus and therefore stopped, is silly, because they never ever accepted Jesus. They never, in fact, they lead to his crucifixion in the end. Right? Because they never accept. I mean, whether he actually dies or not is, obviously Muslims don't believe he actually died there, but the point is the crucifixion as in putting him up on the cross. This was done by the Jews. So it's not that they weren't really going to be enamored by Jesus Christ. They didn't like Jesus by any standard. And they weren't going to say, oh, wow, that's a miracle, so we now believe in Jesus. They don't believe in Jesus, right? They never did believe in Jesus. So that wasn't going to stop them. They would have just killed him as well. So it isn't. So this story, like I said, if you zoom out, you know, it comes to that zooming out and zooming in. If you zoom out, it's a nice story. And it's nice, and you can run with it if you want. But if you zoom in, it doesn't add up. None of the details actually add up, because they wouldn't have cared. Because you know that, because they didn't even care with Jesus. They wanted to kill him. So the other thing is, Mary is never in the Bible ever accused of adultery. Nobody ever accused Mary of adultery through the early Christian sources. I don't mean later on. Later on they did, like hundreds of years after Mary, they started to accuse her of having an affair, as the Christians started to popularize the concept that Jesus never had a father. But in early Christianity, this isn't a popular concept. So nobody in the Gospels ever is speaking about, or in the New Testament, nobody's really speaking of Jesus without a father. So these things don't actually, they're not really mentioned at all back then. And Mary's never ever, she's never has an accusation in her lifetime of being an adulteress. So this doesn't happen like that. So now we've got to zoom in and look at the details. Most likely this is referring to the incident, which is referred to in the Gospel of Luke. Okay, in the Gospel of Luke, what happens is Jesus is brought to, because remember, Jesus is not from Jerusalem. Jesus is from Nazareth, and he grows up around there, around Galilee and those places. He doesn't grow up in Jerusalem at all. Although he does visit Jerusalem regularly, may have visited it every year as well, as was mandatory upon males to visit the temple once a year. Now, the question is that in the Gospel of Luke, at the age of 12, Joseph and Mary bring Jesus to the festival. Now, when the caravan's about to set off, and it sets off, Jesus is missing, and they can't find him. and they search for Jesus. According to the Gospel of Luke, they search for him for 3 days. So they're looking for him for all these days, and they can't find Jesus. They don't know where he is, and Mary is really worried where her son is. Eventually, they find him sitting with the high priests in the great temple. So he's in Jerusalem, and you're not really, children are not really meant to be going. I mean, they do go to the temple, but they're not given any seniority, they don't have a place really. They're just meant to kind of tag along. But he's sitting in there debating the high priests. So what happens is they are really kind of flabbergasted, and they're frustrated with him, because who does he think he is? He's just a kid. Yet he's getting the answers right. And he's running rings around some of them. And he's a young man. He's only 12, according to the Gospel of Luke. So the question is that, and he's there for a few days. And this is in the Gospel of Luke. This is the only incident, really, the main incident of Jesus before he becomes a man. Otherwise, the Gospels don't speak of Jesus as a child. This is one of the only mentions Jesus gets as a child in the Gospel. I think it's in the Gospel of Luke, at the age of 12, when he's missing for over 3 days and Mary can't find him. She eventually finds him in the temple with the high priests, and he's debating with them and teaching them. So they find this, or at least many of them, if not all of them, but many of them find this greatly offensive. That how dare, and just to understand that, you just have to look at how the high priests would behave, the rituals. In fact, there were certain parts that nobody except only certain priests could enter in that temple. And there were certain things and certain offerings that you had to, certain rituals, and not everybody could address all the high priests. And they had a huge list, a code of conduct. And here is this young man debating them about God, about questioning them, and running rings around certain things about them. So they're getting very angry, but it is a festival. It's a holy time. Now Mary finds him. When Mary finds him, this is where they say to her that he's yours. Is he your child? And they say you and him. Like, what an insolent, rude, disrespectful child. And they say, Ya Maryam, Ya Ukhta Harun, you come from a sacred kind of lineage, like you oh sister of Aaron, right? Ma kana abukum ra'asu'in. Your father was not a man of bad conduct. Wa ma kanat ummuki baghiya. And your mother wasn't a filthy woman either. Here, many people thought they're talking about adultery. No, they weren't. They were talking about, then, how have you brought this thing? How dare he sit here and challenge us? If you've come from a noble, does he not understand nobility? Does he not understand etiquettes? So she just says, like she doesn't know what to say. And plus, a woman wasn't given a high place to speak. So she points at him, and he responds, Qala inni Abdullah. He said, but I am just a servant of God. And they are accusing him of not only being rude to them, but inadvertently he's an affront to his mum. Because by being disrespectful, he's bringing shame onto his own mother. So here he says that Allah has made me barram biwalidati. He's made me like kind and good to my mother. And awsani bis salati was zakati ma dumtu hayy. And so these things that Jesus is saying is most likely the incident of when he was 12 years old with the high priests. That's what this incident is talking about. Okay. And hence they begin by, when she says, look, why don't you just ask him? I don't know. They say, كيف نكلم من كان في المهد صبيا. How should you want us to speak to somebody who was only a child yesterday? Because he's 12 and they're belittling him. Man kana fil mahdi sabiya, who was just a boy. You want us to speak to this boy who was in the cradle only yesterday. This is like when we say to people that you were only born yesterday. and you're trying to teach me. This doesn't mean you're literally born yesterday. But what it's trying to say is, like, you have no experience. Like, who are you? That is what this verse is mentioning. So that's one verse that people misunderstand. And they think that, oh, this is speaking about Jesus was a baby talking to... He wasn't doing that. The other thing is that they use a verse elsewhere that Jesus and his message, that وَيُكَلِّمُ النَّاسَ فِي الْمَهْدِ وَكَهْلًا وَفِي الصَّالِحِينَ. And they think this is referring to Jesus because of the first story that they've misunderstood. But it isn't. That وَيُكَلِّمُ النَّاسَ, he will speak to people fil mahdi wa kahlan. Whether he will speak to all people that are around him, those in the cradle and those of old age too. So what that means is that Jesus, when he will preach, that he will have such wisdom, that he will have an expression that it doesn't matter whether they're so young, he will be able to relate to them. If they're so old, he will be able to relate to them. If they are amongst the pious, he will be able to relate to them. وَفِي الصَّالِحِينَ. That this fil mahdi wa kahlan is not to do with the fa'il, the subject, is to do with the maf'ul. An-nas, yukallimun nas. He will speak to people fil mahdi wa kahlan. So this is the difference. So it doesn't categorically say anywhere that Jesus himself spoke, but I accept that that is the popular story going by that interpretation. And I think that interpretation is based on the apocryphal kind of Christian transmissions that are not reliable, but there are some Christian so for example, Jesus has some infancy, there are some infancy gospels, like the infancy gospel of Thomas. That's to differentiate from the gospel of Thomas. So he has the gospel of Thomas, but the infancy gospel of Thomas. And things like this where they speak about Jesus as a child doing some of these things, like he speaks as a baby and does these kind of things. But these were not authentic. Even the Christians did not accept them. Now, it may have been that in early times, some Muslims assumed them to be correct and therefore interpreted these verses to match the apocryphal gospels that they were finding, the infancy gospels. So they may have said, maybe that's what Allah's trying to say, and then they've twisted it that way. But the verses didn't actually say that explicitly, and I would say once you zoom in with that story, it falls apart. So it's okay if you zoom out and it's just a nice story. And then you could believe it. It doesn't really make a difference. It's just a nice story. But when you zoom in, it's a problem because nothing adds up. Because first of all, Mary was never accused of adultery at all in her whole lifetime. And, none of these things actually happened. So it doesn't add up like what? And if it had happened, they would have just killed her. And if this had happened, if Jesus spoke as a baby, they would have believed him as the Messiah. But we never get it. There's no such thing as them accepting him as the Messiah. And, he's never considered even special as a boy. He just goes back. And so none of these things add up when you zoom in. So I hope that makes some sense. Have you read the book about Jesus by Professor Reza Aslan? I've gone through, I think, about half of it. It is a very good book. What's it called? Jesus of Nazareth. I think it's a very good. Is it permissible to use leather goods derived from pig skin? Okay, next question so pig skin, there is a difference of opinion. The difference of opinion is based on the hadith that kullu ihabin dubigha faqad tahur, that every hide, every kind of skin of animals that has been cleansed is pure. So once you tan it and you see to it, it is now halal to use. The question is, it says kullu ihab, all ihab. Does this include all, or are there some exceptions? So the majority of the scholars made exceptions to pig skin. Some scholars made exception to dogs as well. but generally they said pigskin. Most of the scholars made an exception. So they said kullu except pigskin. And some made more exceptions along the way. Some people said no, kullu means kullu, it means all. So amongst them you have the great Maliki legend Sahnun, who is the author of the Mudawwana in the Maliki madhab. He was of the understanding that all means all, including pigskin is fine to wear, pig leather. Dawood al-Zahiri is of that opinion, the great Mujtahid Imam Dawood. He was of that opinion, and so there have been certain scholars of that opinion that pigskin is fine. I mean, in my understanding, I would go with that as well. I would say that it is permissible. If a person, I'm not saying you have to use it. You know, if you don't want to use it, that's fine. But I don't think it's haram to use. In line with these, based on this hadith, that kullu ihabin dubigha faqad tahur, that every ihab. And since that is also an ihab, therefore it applies. So that would have been my understanding. Somebody said, Mufti's voice is so soft. I am listening to a woman speak and her voice is way deeper than his. I have to lower her and raise his. Aiden Hash, Ya Salam. If my voice is so low and the women you're speaking to have got deeper voices, I don't know, are they gender fluid women? Well, Aiden, whatever floats your boat. Whatever floats your boat. What's your opinion on fixed interest? Yep, I've answered that. Until this day, they can't agree on what is God's word and what isn't. ما رأيك عن المدرسة البصرة والكوفة? I take it that's in grammar. Yeah, the madrasas in grammar, most people won't understand them. So, but they're basically how grammar in Arabic is recognized, how it's formulated, who came up with the rules. So in the early days, you had two major splits. You had the school of Basra, school of Kufa, and they were led by their own kind of people, and Khalil ibn Ahmad al-Farahidi with Basra, and you had Abu Ja'far al-Ru'asi and other people, then people like Kasa'i, and you've got obviously Sibawayh, the student of him, and you've got on this side Farra, and you've got Tha'lab also on this side, and you've got Mubarrid on that side, and these things, they're really fascinating. I was well into grammar, so I really appreciated the kind of debates and everything. I think it really stops with those two, who both share the same kunya, Abu Abbas Mubarrid and Abu Abbas Tha'lab. And then after that, it kind of merges into what is the Madrasa of Baghdad, with people like Ambari and other people that start to emerge in the Madrasa of Baghdad. Today, most of Arabic grammar is pretty much Basri, heavily Basri, with some Kufic influences here and then. Ajrumiyya, for example, is influenced by Kufic way of thinking, so hence he uses words like jazm. So jazm is the Kufi term for what the Basris used sukoon. Things like when you say khaft, they say khaft in Kufa, they say jar in Basra. Like these, they had major differences as well, but these are subtle differences. But yeah, so anyway, cool. That's that. Which golden chain of did Imam Malik reject? His own. Imam Malik rejected slander of Maryam. I'm not sure what that means. How to specialize? She's a black woman, by the way. Mufti, how do you avoid messing up your hairdo when you do wudu? I just go straight over like that. My hair is pretty spiky as it is. So what's the meaning, purpose of life? How to specialize? I'm trying to catch up. I realized that my the screen had frozen the questions. Right, so, okay, let's get back to what was the question I was looking at? Right, okay, let me give a bit of context. Jonathan Brown recently made a post. I don't know if I shared a screenshot of it, and I made a... somebody wrote, the meaning of life is 42. Hell yeah. So let's stick to, before I transgress everywhere, before I digress, sorry, transgress. So Jonathan Brown wrote a post about, look, I have now, he's been translating Sahih Bukhari or a certain portion of it, I don't know. But he wrote this post saying, look, and I am so humbled by this experience. That Imam Bukhari was the Don of Dons, and over time I've only come to realize how much greater of a Don he is than I thought. I thought he's just a Don, but he's the Don of the Dons of the Dons. And he's so amazing, and which he was, and I don't doubt that Imam Bukhari was an amazing person, but he said, like, you don't understand, like, now I know how great he is because I've been going through his book. You think, acha? What book have you been going through? Because what do you think is in Sahih Bukhari? Like, it's collections of hadith. So I don't know how you're reading into the geniusness of, how do you interpret the genius of Imam Bukhari by just reading a collection of hadith? Because the hadith are not his words. So anyway, so he said, basically Imam Bukhari was just up there. And he said that despite being a non-Arab, we never have known of him to have ever spoken other than Arabic. I mean, in all honesty, that doesn't mean anything, because everybody back then spoke Arabic, for God's sake. It's the Arab world. I mean, it was the Muslim world, the lingua franca of the world at that time, especially during the Abbasid reign, when Islam was at its peak and the civilization was blossoming, and, you've had all this this kind of influx of wealth and opulence, and so Arabic was the lingua franca. So most people did speak another language, because most people were not native Arabs. They were Arabs by culture and Arabs by language because they spoke Arabic, but they were not Arabs by descent. Okay, so Imam Bukhari was not Arab by descent. His great grandfather Burduzibe is obviously definitely not an Arab name. In fact, he was a slave, and then he's a freed slave, and so on. But many, even earlier than him, Imam Abu Hanifa and all these great Imams, most of these Hufaz of Hadith, these great scholars, Abu Dawood, Tirmidhi, all these great people were not Arabs by descent. Okay, so most, I'm not saying all, but most weren't. So they must have spoken other languages. And many of them even wrote, even Imam Ghazali, all these people, they even wrote in other languages, like Farsi was a very popular language at the time. So they spoke in Farsi or whatever other language they spoke in, but it doesn't mean that they would always write in, because it's not the language to do things in, you see. So, so anyway, so Jonathan Brown was saying, that this is so amazing, and I'm so in awe, and this book, and I'm against people trying to raise any doubts about this book, because, now I just know the true genius of Imam Bukhari. And I shared the post, or then I shared some screenshots of it, and I wrote a post saying, because somebody tagged me into it, and I said, look, I appreciate his journey, Dr. Jonathan Brown's, and out of respect, and that I call him Ustad, because he, that I said Ustad Jonathan Brown's development, ilmi development, I respect it. But I said, look, baat kuch yun hai babba. The matter is such that, you see, for us, we began this journey by studying the entire book with teachers cover to cover. You see, like, you still wouldn't have even got to that stage yet. Like, I don't think, not by any disrespect, but I don't think any of these kind of people generally have even studied Bukhari from cover to cover with a teacher. That was where we began. That is where I began over 17 years ago. I began my journey with Bukhari by reading it from cover to cover and going through the whole thing, studying it like actual study, not just like being tested, having to pass tests on it, being, that whole thing, being then authorized to teach it. So it's not a, reading commentaries on it. I remember going through whole chunks. I went through, in fact, almost the entire of Ibn Battal's commentary. I went through huge chunks of Fathul Bari back then. I mean, this is, we're talking just under 2 decades ago, almost 17 years ago. So the point is that, look, we've done that. This is nothing like, you see, our studies on Bukhari, when it comes to most of these ulama, is way over their pay grade. Yeah. It's like this is nothing new for us. Like, when we study Sahih Bukhari like this, or we've, like they say, oh, the fiqh of the Imam Bukhari is in his tarajum, it's in his chapter headings. But then with time, with research, I began to realize, oh, well, actually, most of his chapter headings weren't even done by him. And people actually edited his chapter headings. Abu Ishaq al-Mustamli openly owns up to doing that. And he's one of the key contributors to the copy of Sahih Bukhari we have today. And Abu al-Walid al-Baji accepts that. Other people acknowledge that. Ibn Hajar acknowledges it in his Fath al-Bari. So all of these things that you see that, oh, so even the chapter heading, Abu Ishaq al-Mustamli says that, oh, by the way, all of Sahih Bukhari today just relies on this one rather dubious character called Farabri. And nobody seems to know who this Farabri was. I mean, I know retrospectively everybody seems to know who he was, but in his time, nobody seems to ever vouch for him. Yes, hundreds of years later, people are all vouching for him now, but that doesn't matter. They never met him. In his own lifetime, nobody seems to deem him to be authentic in hadith or reliable. Not a single person said that ever met Farabri vouched for him as a reliable transmitter of hadith. So everything comes through Farabri. Farabri's own students and his 6 key students, and amongst them the key 3, and the senior one, Abu Ishaq al-Mustamli, he is saying himself that, by the way, our teacher's copy was an incomplete copy. It was still a draft copy. And he says, he says there were chapter headings with no hadith in there. And there were hadith with no chapter headings, so we used to move them around. Now, you see, this kind of stuff has been happening, and then people have been adding, they've been taking away. If you look at Ibn Abdul Hadi's book on the ikhtilaf of the nusakh, the different scripts of Sahih Bukhari, where he shows not only words, not only subtle names, entire chains are different sometimes. So we don't have a single version of Sahih Bukhari today that can authentically, with certainty, go back to Imam Bukhari. So the question is, well, okay, we still respect it. It's still a great piece of work and we take things from it, but we always measure it up to the Quran. If it doesn't add up, if it contradicts with the Quran on anything, we always leave it. We don't leave the Quran based on that. You got to be crazy. You got to be smoking some serious stuff if you're going to abandon the Quran based on Khabru Ahad of Imam Bukhari, which, by the way, doesn't even reach Imam Bukhari authentically, as in concretely, it doesn't reach him. So, I mean, there's speculation, of course. So, yes, I mean, and you can watch my Bukhari Gate video, and my whole point was, I said, look, I stay true to the school of Medina. Sorry, somebody has said, Farabri is not the only transmitter. There were many others narrated that book to later generations, such as Ibrahim ibn Ma'qal. Okay, and Hamad ibn Shakir, Mansur I think what you want to write, Burduzi al-Bazdawi. Right, so first of all, let's just stop right there. Okay, Mansur is the last narrator, transmitter to transmit from Sahih Bukhari. His thing does not reach us at all, despite the fact he's considered utterly unreliable by scholars of hadith. But even that said, let's see a copy from Mansur. Let's see anything that you have from Mansur. Put that aside. Hamad ibn Shakir, there's some things from Hamad ibn Shakir, nothing substantial, some things some people have said. The main transmitter, the other one, Ibrahim ibn Ma'qal, I actually have it. I have it, my friend. This is not news. The only transmission you have through him is through the teacher of Khattabi, right, who transmits it in his thing. And even he says, Khattabi in his Sunan, which I actually brought for my research for Bukhari, I actually flew out because I was like, I need that book, flew out to a different country, found it, bought it, came back with it. Because the whole thing was, in that book, he only brings 1,200 hadith. Not the almost 8,000 of Sahih Bukhari, 1,200. In his introduction, he says, and even I don't have the complete thing through Ibrahim ibn Ma'qal, so I have to, even in this summary, I have to still rely on Farabri. So that's the first point. The second thing is, hadith is that which is transmitted bis sama'. Not just ijazah. Like if I pick this book up and say, I give you this ijazatan, there could be mistakes in this book. That's not how hadith is transmitted. That's called wijada or munawala. Munawala, wijada if you just found it, but munawala is not a reliable transmission for hadith. If you read Qadi Iyad's book on sama, on how to transmit hadith called Ilma, he actually says most ulama considered that haram. They actually considered it la yajuz, that you transmit that to be the words of the Prophet, as in believe in it, if you just had it sent to you like this, because there could be many errors in it. And this, my friend, explains why we have part of the problem today. The only way you can teach hadith is bis sama'. That means it has to keep going from teacher to student, as in I read through it and I say, oh well, that's actually a mistake because my teacher taught me like this and his teacher taught him like this. The only riwayah you have muttasilun bis sama' is stated by all the scholars, is stated by whether it's going to be Qadi Iyad, it's stated by, he mentions it in his Masharik al-Anwar. You have Ibn Hajar in his Fath, just read the introduction. He writes that the only riwayah we have bis sama' that has come with sama' is Farabri. That is the only riwayah to have reached Muslims with sama'. That means that they actually taught and read. The Ibrahim ibn Ma'qal al-Nasafi, his riwayah that they have the 1,200 hadith has not been taught, right? And whether it was taught to the people around him, we don't know. It may have been, but it was never conveyed. So it definitely hasn't reached us. It didn't even reach Ibn Hajar. Forget us, it didn't even reach Ibn Hajar. He even says the only riwayah reaching me and reaching us Muslims today worldwide, bis sama' is Farabri's. And Farabri, this one, the Farabricate, you know, Farabri, this one dubious character, you know, this one, I'm not, and you know all these people, Farabri was such a great Imam. Kahe ka Imam, yaar? Kaun sa Imam? When did Farabri become an Imam? Can you tell me anything about Farabri? That what other books did he write? What were his opinions in Islam? What kind of an Imam was he? This is, you know, posthumous kind of, because he died and he conveyed, Sahih Bukhari comes through him. So therefore, we've now turned him into a great Imam to help our cause. This is just self-engineered, reverse engineering. If this was any other religion, you would call it out. You'd call that out straight away as the nonsense it is. But because we're part of it, we're not going to be critical. People are going to turn a blind eye and say, Tiga, you know, we're not worthy, we're not worthy. This one not nice, my friend. So we must always be true to the cause, Allah and His Messenger. Yes, we accept Sahih Bukhari, ala ra'si wal ayn, just like every other hadith book. So long with the three conditions: it doesn't go against reason, it doesn't clash with the Quran, it doesn't clash with Islamic principles. So long as these three are met, fine, we accept the hadith. If it does clash, then that way is the window, my friend. You throw it out the window, okay? Anything that clashes with with reason, ما لم يبين المعقول ولم يخالف المنقول ولم يناقض الأصول. These are the three principles. Then so long we accept that. And that's, by the way, taught to us by Imam Malik. Okay, Imam Malik teaches us that. He brings the most authentic chain, which Imam Bukhari himself says. Imam Bukhari himself says there isn't a more authentic chain on earth. There is not a... Yeah, oh, by the way, Radar Khan has said this. This is a good point, actually. I'm glad you mentioned this. Al-Khatib al-Baghdadi, in his book, not just Baghdadi, Ibn Asakir, all these people narrate that Frabri said about 70,000. Let me correct you, Radar Ji, because your tahqiq is still a bit below the radar. This topic that you're approaching, Ispe Apun is an expert in this. His quote is actually 90,000. Okay, so you're about 20,000 short. But chalta hai yaar, you're a novice. It's okay. It's okay. Right? So the thing is, he actually quotes, he says 90,000 people sat there and heard Bukhari with me. This is actually such an embarrassing quote that even Dhahabi had to say, Dhahabi, when he quotes it, tries to kind of cover it up and say, this isn't true, this isn't true. Somebody must have made this up. Why? Because it's so embarrassing. He's saying 90,000 people heard Bukhari with me. Finish the quote. You didn't think that there's more to it. He says, and none of them are alive today except me. He says, none of them transmit it today. Sorry, none of them transmit it except me. Abey, yaar, talk about delusions of grandeur. Who the hell are you? Frabri is not even a rated scholar of hadith. Imam Bukhari had many great scholars, much great students, much greater than Frabri. Frabri is a nobody. All these great scholars, according to him, 90,000. And nobody today transmits it except him, who is unknown. That is such a diss. That is such a diss. What do you mean, like 90,000 people heard this and the only person left to transmit it is you, who nobody knows? Hi, ye kismat yaar. Hi, re kismat. Right, so that's such a diss for Imam Bukhari. That's like Imam Bukhari, but if Imam Bukhari heard that statement, Bichara would have gone into depression. He would have been like, what the hell? I've suffered enough. Imam Bukhari would have been, Ya Allah, it has now got too much for me. I've only got Frabri. And Frabri, nobody knows who he is. Anyway, right, watch my Bukhari gate. I've got a detailed video. I ain't going to go back and forth on this, right? But if you watch my Bukhari gate, I tackle all of these issues there. What I'll do is I'll take a few rapid round questions that some people have posted, because people say I neglect their questions and I don't want to upset the people, you know. Let's see. And then what I'll do is I'll do a bit of the Mufti Masala and then we can call it a night, people. Right, anyway, what is somebody still, Radar Khan is still going on. Please watch my Bukhari Gate video. And here is a challenge. Bring any scholar, with the condition is a scholar. He must be on my pay grade, you know. Preferably a Mufti, but he doesn't have to be a Mufti. Any scholar, any Imam, tell them to watch Mufti, watch my video on Bukhari. It's on YouTube, Bukhari Gate, and tell them to have a dialogue with me on it. Any of them, if they can prove to me today, authentically, with that Sahih Bukhari going back, if any single person can authenticate Farabri for me, from somebody who actually met him, one person who actually met him and actually says, not just, don't infer, don't say, oh, but he never criticized him. That just because I didn't criticize you doesn't mean I accept you. Right? Some people might just be silent, but somebody who actually vouches for him, one person, I won't ask for two, one, one, there's only one God, one Quran. So one vouching will do, just one. So you bring me one person who says Imam Farabri. I say Imam, he wasn't an Imam, but Chalo Muhammad ibn Yusuf al-Farabri is a reliable scholar in Hadith, but with the condition that the person saying it has actually met him. Not somebody coming 100 years after he's dead. There's no point, like, that's like me saying, I don't know, John Smith, who lived in 1905, who died in 1905, had an excellent memory. He said, well, have you ever met John Smith? No. Okay. So, say, Fuzul. This kind of vouching is just ridiculous. I can vouch for anybody. Yeah, he had an excellent memory. He had an excellent memory. He had an excellent memory. Have you actually researched? I mean, did you actually meet them? No. Do you know anything about them? No. Did they ever talk to you? No. Cha. So please, like this, I can vouch for Farabri. Yeah, Farabri is my jigri. Don't get me wrong. I respect Farabri. He did well. Yeah. Well played. He did well. But he wasn't. But I'm just trying to be objective. I'm just trying to go by the science of Hadith. The science of Hadith is he ought to be vouched for. Like when I become a Mufti, I have to be vouched for as a Mufti. I need to pass a test, I need to have a certificate. So, Farabri needs to be vouched for. Like people need to say, Farabri, Imam February, you're the Don. One person just vouch for him. Doesn't need to praise him too highly. Just say that, look, he's acceptable in Hadith. I won't ask for a second. Ja, जी ले अपनी जिंदगी. That's what I'll say. I'll say, Ja Farabri, Ja. Imam Sahab, जी लो अपनी जिंदगी. So that's the... Let's take some of these questions really quickly. But like I said, you're more than welcome to watch my Bukhari Gate, get any Imam to have a dialogue with me on it. If I'm wrong, they can easily disprove me. Easily. So easy, so easy. What would I know anyway? Just come on, look at me. Look at me. Do I look like I know anything on this? Should be easy for them to refute me. Right, okay. Qadiani, forget this. Right, Qadiani question. Can you explain Imkani Kidh, please? What a ridiculous question. People, I hate these kind of questions. I'm going to be honest. Right, so somebody said, scholar for dollar. But he... Umar Jat, scholar for dollar, but he misspelled the scholar. Okay, right, so I hate these kind of questions really because they're meaningless, they have no purpose behind them. Imkan kidb, it means that can Allah lie? This is stupid. Because what is the point of this question? What are you trying to question here? Like, can Allah have... And I've mentioned before, people like Sheikh Ramadan al-Bhuti and other people have answered these kind of things, saying, look, if you're asking about capacity, Allah has the capacity to do anything. He's God. But do we believe that he has lied? We don't believe that he's lied. We believe God is truthful in what he has said. But are we saying that God is incapacitated? He's incapable of things. But why are you even asking such a question which would place God in a negative light? Like, it's like saying, you know, can God just be responsible for genocide? I mean, what kind of a dumb question is that? You know, God doesn't do these things. People like this need to seriously get themselves checked out mentally. Because what is this imkanul kidhb, can God lie, can God lie? Lying simply means to state something that doesn't correlate with reality. Like, if I held this up now and I said, this is a red mug. It isn't. What I said does not correlate with reality. This is a white watch. It isn't. All I've done, if I said now, there is a mobile phone in my hand, I've said something that does not correlate with reality. So you're asking, that action, is God incapacitated to do that? Like, for God to state something that doesn't correlate with reality would incapacitate him, and he would somehow, you know, be an incapable being. Well, that's obviously a dumb question. Well, I'm sure anybody can state something that doesn't correlate with reality. There's nothing so big about that. So what's the point of this whole imkanul kidhb? It's a stupid Indo-Pak debate that is still going on between Deobandis and Brelvis. They need to fix themselves, okay? Right. So this is, and look, there you go. We've been vouched for by Maulana Khadim Hussain Rizvi Saab. That's it. In the words of Maulana Khadim Hussain Rizvi, to those people, this ain't my words, his words. Dalle. These are his famous words. Usura. Astaghfirullah. Toba, 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 toba. Do we need to give zakat if we pay taxes in countries with advanced welfare system? That's an interesting question. I think that is an interesting question. Generally, I would say that we need to do ijtihad and things like that. Zakat is still something I would say that Muslims should give if they can, if they are eligible to pay the zakat. But I think that question does hold some integrity, and it is something that is worth researching and looking into. Which golden chains of Imam Malik did he reject? He rejected his own golden chain. Imam Malik has what is called the golden chain. Imam Bukhari called it the golden chain. Hence it got the name, the golden chain. And Silsilat al-Dhahabiyya, and that is Malik and Nafi' and Ibn Umar. Between Malik and the Prophet are two people, Nafi' from Ibn Umar. This is called the golden chain in Hadith. So there's several of these and others, but there's including the golden chain, which Imam Malik brings in the Muwatta and then tells you, by the way, we don't accept this Hadith. That's in several Hadith, he does that. Because, and Imam Malik said, he said that because the deen comes to us through a mass, through en masse, basically, through this living tradition of Medina. These isolated narrations of Hadith, he said, will snatch the deen from in front of us. He said that the deen is 1,000 from 1,000. One on one, he said, will snatch this deen from in front of you. Those are his words. That alfun and alf, that wahid and wahid, yanzi'u ad-din min bayni yadayk. So that was the statement of Imam Malik, and that's where I responded to Jonathan Brown by saying that this is what we stand true to, the legacy of the school of Medina. What are jinns? Is there a difference between jinns and jan? If you read the Quran, there's no fixed meaning of jinn. That is true. Jinn simply means something that is unseeable. Like is from the unseen. That's all it means, jinn. It doesn't actually, like, I know today when we say jinn, we think of like demon. But the term jinn in the Quran generally is referring to just the unseen, something of the unseen. Now, and then it does refer to like a being, an entity from that. But what is that entity like? For example, Does the entity exist in just the quantum world? We don't know. See, these are questions they didn't think of in the past because they didn't understand the quantum world in the past. So, would it be possible to fly to London and learn from you? Wah, flattered, yeah. AKA, hello. You're most welcome to come to, I'm in Birmingham, not in London, but you're most welcome to drop by. If you ever want to reach out and link up, just reach out to Muhammad Shaban on Facebook, and inshallah, he'll set it all up. Okay, so is it normal for Mufti to be late? Hell yeah, it's very normal. Time around me just runs on a different parallel. It's not, there's that famous, there was a song, it's a Bollywood song that मैं देर करता नहीं देर हो जाती है. It's like it's not that I delay things, it's just that it's not that I'm late, it's just that I get late. It sounds much better in Urdu, I gotta say. The hadith, somebody's asked about the black seed. You see, people like the great Maliki legend Ibn Khaldun and the sociology scholar has highlighted that, look, the medicine that the Prophet ﷺ spoke of was generally medicine used by the Arabs in his time. They were not Islamically divine medicines. They weren't things that were godly inspired. They were just things that had cures to them. So nature has a cure to many things. But so the diseases that come from nature have their cure in nature. So, people that have, through trial and error, unearthed, uncovered, discovered these things, so they can swear by them. And people will say, so for example, garlic, that it has has amazing, incredible, not ridiculous, has incredible kind of healing powers. It may, it's anti-inflammatory and it kind of boosts the immune system and it does all these things. And people could say today that, for example, certain fish oils, how they repair the joints and things like this. So there's many things that today, obviously through science, we know a lot more. But nature has a cure to many things around us. So now, based on that, so in the Prophet's time, they also had access to these things. So they would say that, so for example, black seed is a cure to everything because of its miraculous nature. When I say miraculous, I mean casually miraculous. I don't mean like divinely miraculous. But because it was an amazing, agent in boosting the immune system or doing the things that it did. Does that mean this is somehow some Islamic medicine now? No, there's no such thing as an Islamic medicine. Okay. Some Muslims did go off on that road of Islamic medicine, and I think it was just really, I think it was silly, and it was just insecurities that, I know people like Ibn al-Qayyim started it and this whole thing because they felt insecure because of Muslims taking up regular medicine and science, and they wanted to kind of show that, no, actually there must be an Islamic science, an Islamic medicine. This stuff, it makes no sense. It's like saying Islamic physics, Islamic mathematics. What are we even talking about? What do these things even mean? Islamic mathematics, Islamic physics, Islamic biology. There is no such thing. There is no Islamic medicine. Medicine is just medicine. It's just through trial and error. These things are not to do with religion. So Ibn Khaldun writes this very clearly in his Muqaddimah, where he speaks about medicine, that these things that come through to us through the Hadith are not Islamic per se. They're just, the Prophet is speaking of them as he would, being from that environment. So not to think this is something God is saying you must take, but it's just something that generally the Arabs of the time did. So the Arabs of the time used cupping, bloodletting. This is not an Islamic thing. Yes, the Prophet also partook in bloodletting and things like this, but so did everybody in that environment. It wasn't just the Prophet. Everybody, regardless, Muslim, non-Muslim, everybody did it. So the Prophet also did it. It's like if I live in the UK today, whether I'm a Muslim or whether somebody's a non-Muslim, there's many things we'll all just do because of the day and age, because of our shared culture, our shared environment. So it's things like that. So these things are not Islamic per se. Okay. Right, okay. Okay, people, with that, I think we're going to have to start wrapping it up. Oh, I almost forgot. Yes, magic exists. Oh, I've answered all of that before. Some people said Mufti never has a healthy drink online. So I get this one, you know, the orange juice. Never from concentrate, you know, so smooth. Right, so people, this week's Mufti Masala, right? The Mufti Masala segment. So, people, guess what? It reaches me. It reaches me. There is a power struggle. You know, there's a power struggle going on. So, our beloved Sheikh Asrar Ji, in his local Birmingham masjid, there's been a lot of the power struggle between the old committee and the new committee. You know, I don't know if you guys have heard of this, but there's the police has been involved. You know, there's a police case. You know? People, right? So this, you wouldn't truly understand unless I brought this up earlier on. I want you to picture this. I'm going to put the volume up. The door's getting locked. Look. Hum tum. और चाबी खो जाए. So what's happened, people? I gotta fill you in. Wait. So what's happened is, हम तुम एक कमरे में बंद हो. If we are locked in a room, और चाबी खो जाए, you know, and the key is lost. You know, this one, what to do? You know, the problem is they've been locked, but they've been locked outside. So what's happened, people? So apparently, some people a few months ago, I think maybe 4 months or 5 months ago, decided to oust Sheikh Asrar and the old committee members, whoever of the mosque. So they went in and they changed all the locks. And they had all the new keys and the people couldn't come in, and these guys somehow became the new members by... they became in charge because they changed the locks and they said they had a right, and then there was this struggle going on, back, forth. And I think part of the condition, my Mufti Intel tells me, intelligentsia, the waswasa, tells me that one of the conditions was they wanted Sheikh Asrar removed from the mosque. I don't know why, you know, he's a pleasant, this one nice boy, you know, this one good boy. So he was apparently meant to be, part of the condition was, I think, to remove Sheikh Asrar from the mosque. So there was a negotiation battle going on, battle of the titans, people. These people change the locks. No, old people, they can't, the old committee people can't come in, no. So what's happened is recently, upon an opportunity, the old committee, they come and they change the lock. Lock change back, you know. The key no work, you know. So they've changed the locks. So now the coup committee were trying to do a coup, couldn't get back in. So they took the matter to court. So the court issued a warrant of execution, you know that one. Not that execution. The judge execution. So the warrant, and they issued an order, an evacuation order, to say that all people must vacate the building within 24 hours of being served this notice. And they said that if they don't, then that is a criminal offense that may result, let me, one moment, my friends, that may result in prison, prison. So as you can imagine, that's like, what the hell? Let me just see if I've got it here. I've got to be careful. All right, no, I think I've deleted, but there's the actual order going around. So they said that if anybody violates this, everybody must evacuate the premises, an eviction order, nobody to be in these premises within 24 hours of being served. And then it was cordoned off, and they had the police tape on there, do not enter, and nobody was allowed in the masjid. Yeah, so this is the coup committee had got this order. So then there was a speech by Sheikh Asrar in his local masjid saying, we will defy the order. Right, so he's saying, people, stand strong. What this? So he was reading out he said that, what this lock, huh? Or chabi ko jai, but we need to get in, we need to get in. So he was like, oh, tomorrow we will carry on, we will go in there, we will resist, and if anybody forcibly tries to remove us from this masjid, then we will stand our ground. And he gave this whole, rallied the thing. And so I believe he turned up with some of his, past the 24 hours, he turned up with some of his supporters. They went into the masjid, or they tried to, I think they broke in to get in, and the other guys just called the cops, and then they legged it. Yaar, ye ho kya? What is, ¿qué está pasando? ¿Qué está pasando? What is going on, people? What is going on? This is too much. This is, what is locked doors, isn't the dua, Allahumma aftah li abwaba rahmatik, open your doors of, but there's a power struggle, the doors are locked, So Bechara Sheikh Asrar Ji has been left outside, door locked, kundi, the kundi has been has been placed, the kundi. So, and he's standing outside, Bechara. Difficult times. So apparently the new committee are saying, the coup committee, that part of the condition is that Sheikh Asrar cannot be welcomed back. Kundi mat katkao Raja. Sida andar aao Raja. So I'm not welcome here. No. So Bechara Sheikh Asrar is going through some difficult time, I think, But we want Sheikh Asrar to know that no matter how many doors are slammed, shut, that the doors of our hearts are always open. Sheikh Asrar, our heart is always open for you. Okay, so this is some of the politics going on. It reaches me that there's all this struggle going on in Woodlands Road Mosque in Birmingham, and at the center of it is Sheikh Asrar. So I was like, power, politics, people, committees, sectarianism, Sheikh Asrar. So I had to speak on it. But afsos. कौन इस घर की देखभाल करे, रोज एक चीज टूट जाती है. That who will look after this house, that every day a thing is broken. Ya salam. That poem, people, which was said by John Elia, is from the Sahlun Mumtana. It's from those which are so easily expressed, but they carry such a complex meaning. That कौन इस घर की देखभाल करे, रोज एक चीज टूट जाती है. सितम तो ये है कि अब तेरी सूरत गौर करने पे याद आती है. हाय. Uff. that he says now it's a tragedy, that the greatest tragedy is that only that to remember you I have to concentrate and think. to remember what you look like, that's such a tragedy. So people, with that, inshallah, I think we should wrap this up. It's been awesome, but it's way too late. Guys, remember me as always in your kind du'as. Khadimukum, okay? Here to serve. I'm here to serve as a locksmith. Locksmith? Oh yeah. By the way, did I mention that I was training to how to open locks and padlocks and things like this, and at one point I was actually very good at it. Quite good. Can somebody convey the message to our beloved Jani? I can ताला खोल सकते हैं यार. So you know, if he needs help with the locks being opened, there. Other than that, people, right? Take very good care of yourselves, inshallah. Till next week, remember me and all in your kind du'as. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.